I'm donating milk. I'm starting a podcast about breastfeeding. I'm encouraging people about breastfeeding. And my baby has lost weight. The pressure and just the feeling of like, is my milk enough? And now what am I going to do? Am I going to stand on that? Am I going to keep saying that your milk is enough? Trust your milk? Or am I going to have to supplement with formula? Welcome back to the Breastfeeding Diaries, episode 12. I had a goal to make it to 12 episodes, and now I've achieved that goal. So that's been great. We've kind of slowed down a little bit. I've really been doing about one a month, which I think is a pretty good pace for someone who's a working mom as well. So I'm pretty proud of what I've been able to do here with the show, and I hope that anyone who's listening has enjoyed everything with the show so far. I have some ideas for kind of taking us to the next level and going out and getting some new guests and some new promotions. So today is going to be myself again. So I shared a couple episodes back my birth story and a breastfeeding story with my firstborn, Owen. And now I wanted to share how things went with my second, Calvin. He turned 1 a couple episodes into the podcast. So I already kind of had things going and wanted to obviously make it to that 12-month goal, since that's kind of what I've been promoting on the show. So I wanted to make it to 12 months and then share what happened with you guys. I've shared a lot on social media of how that weaning and nursing breastfeeding journey has gone. And so I wanted to share that with you guys now. So he just turned 14 months and we are still nursing. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about our weaning journey when we get to that part, but I do like to tell it in order. So let's go all the way back to the beginning with the birth story and the start of our breastfeeding journey. So Calvin was due on July 6th, and leading up, of course, during that pregnancy, I had 3 goals. So I wrote down a little bit of my birth story here, so I'll kind of read a little bit of that to you, but I had 3 goals, right? So since Owen was born at 32 weeks, my water broke, he was in the NICU, all of that. My first goal with my second pregnancy was to have a full-term baby. So no matter what happened, I was like 40 weeks. I would love to have a full-term baby. 36 to 40 weeks. My second goal was to have a VBAC. So since my birth with Owen was a C-section, I wanted to have a vaginal birth. So that was my second goal. And then my third goal was to have an unmedicated birth. So that would be the cherry on top if I got goals 1 and 2. But the priority was goal number 1, and then if that worked out, number 2, and then number 3. So I went back to the same OB who had done my C-section with Owen. He was very supportive of VBACs. And I figured if I did need a C-section again, he could do a good job with the surgery. He was a pretty standard as far as like traditional hospital norms go. But I was really thankful throughout all of it that he was fairly hands-off and very supportive. So when I made it past 32 weeks, I was shocked. I worked with the functional nutritionist the whole time. She was my friend and also helped me out with looking at my lab work. She was the one who found that my progesterone was low. So I started a prescription for progesterone, which I continued until I think 36 weeks. I also did gluten-free the whole time. I had started that before I got pregnant, so just wanted to help my hormones and help my health and everything. And then at 35 weeks, I was like, okay, I made it to the first goal, which was to hopefully stay out of the NICU. And then throughout all of this, we were praying like, Lord, help Calvin to make it to 40 weeks. And at 36 weeks, my doctor started saying, oh, are you ready for me to do a membrane sweep? Are you ready to start some of these natural induction processes? And I was like, why? It's only 36 weeks. Like, we prayed for Calvin to make it to 40 weeks. So that's what we need to do. That's what we told God. We told God 40 weeks. So we can't change the plan now. So I said no to some of those things that he was wanting me to do. Then at 37 weeks, I was at work and I started shaking uncontrollably. Thought maybe it was blood sugar, low blood sugar, something like that. But it turned out I was actually starting to become septic from a severe UTI. So was hospitalized for 3 days. It was terrible. One of the worst experiences, but I did not go into labor. I was stuck at the hospital where my doctor was not there, and none of the doctors there were supportive of VBAC. So I was very much like, I have to get out of here so that I can have my VBAC, and just praying that I wouldn't go into labor, which I did not. So 3 days in the hospital, didn't go into labor, got out. My arms are covered in, bruises from having so much lab work and antibiotics and IVs. So I go back to my doctor at 38 weeks and he's like, "Are you ready to do a membrane sweep and we can get labor going?" And I was like, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be back in the hospital. So I went ahead and let him do a cervix check, and no dilation at all, just 0. So another week goes by and we're at 39 weeks. And again, my doctor had said, "I don't want you going over 40 weeks. I think that's going to hurt your chances of a VBAC, because if you go over 40 weeks, we're going to have to talk about some medical forms of induction, and medical inductions do increase your risks of having either a repeat C-section or having a uterine rupture during labor." So the goal is to go into labor naturally with no Pitocin. So I went ahead and agreed to the membrane sweep at 39 weeks because I was like, okay, I guess I'm ready. Really, the whole time I was like fine with him being in there, like so happy that he had made it so far. Anyone who's had a premature baby, I think, understands this feeling. It's very different, I think, than what moms who maybe are first timer who have had full-term babies. I hear them like kind of complaining, like, "Oh, I just want this baby out. I just want this baby out. I'm too big. I'm too tired. My ankles are swollen." And I'm definitely not trying to make fun of the ladies that feel that way, because it is very common. So if you're listening and you're like, please don't make fun of me. But I think people who have experienced a preterm birth know that hearing those complaints is hard to hear, because we've experienced the pain and the struggle and the trauma that can come from having a premature baby. And so when we hear those complaints, it's like, okay, but isn't it worth it, to have a healthy baby? And there's so much brain development that's happening, even at 38 weeks, 39 weeks, 40 weeks. Like, there is a reason why God created this gestational period, and every day counts. And I don't want to complain about that, or, try to like force this baby out, That Thursday was the 4th of July, which I was like, nah, I don't want to go into labor today. Like, this is a fun holiday, and I don't want him to have to share his birthday with the 4th of July. So had a great time, took my older son to the fireworks, and just had a great time. So after that, the next day was Friday, and I did a couple of things. I did the miles circuit. I did some pumping. So getting into the value of pumping here. And then I guess I'll try and go a little faster through all of this. So I did go into labor, started having contractions, and then that was at 1 a.m. on my due date. So at this point it's Saturday, but it feels like Friday night because it was 1 a.m. So Saturday, July 6th, start going into labor. Early labor was kind of chill, just like hanging out with my son and my husband. And then I did the mile circuit again. And after that, I couldn't really like just keep playing with Owen through the contractions. I needed to focus. So That was when my doula came over, and so for the whole afternoon and evening, we just talked and hung out in between contractions. It was very chill, and then she went to go get dinner, and during that, I laid down, and then it got more intense, so I was like, "I really need you to come back." Still at home, thinking like, "Let's go to the hospital as late as possible," because I didn't wanna go to the hospital and things to stall. But I started feeling, like, kinda nauseated, kinda anxious. I was like, "I think I need to go be at the hospital just in case things do pick up or throw up or something." I wanna be surrounded by the nurses and feel supported. So we got in the car and got into the hospital, got checked by a nurse, and I was already at 7 centimeters. And she was like, "Okay, I'll call the doctor in 4 hours." About 30 minutes later, I was on my hands and knees, dilated to a 10, leaning over my yoga ball, like screaming because my water had cracked and broken. And I hear the nurses going, "There is no time to get the doctor. Get buckets, get water." Like, just kind of similar to the drama of the movies a little bit. And so that part I kind of describe as like flying off the inner tube when you're tubing on the lake, just completely out of control and just hanging on for dear life, hanging onto my husband's hands while every contraction kind of like launched me backwards. I felt like completely out of control, couldn't breathe. And then next thing you know, his head had come out, his body had come out, and the nurses were catching him on a pillow on the floor. So that's kind of the birth story. It was crazy. It was just nuts at that point. And all of a sudden it was like, here I am having my unmedicated birth, and it's a vaginal birth and just everything that I had dreamed of. So very, very magical. So we got to have our golden hour. He never left our side. Again, so different from the experience when you have a C-section NICU baby. And with Owen, it was just, he's wheeled off to the NICU and had to pump and everything. But this time I got to have that magical golden hour, got to have skin to skin and start nursing him. And I felt just so confident when it came to nursing and pumping. I had come prepared with a pump and a bottle just in case, but planning to nurse fully. And then I had my nipple shield. I had my best friend pillow. I was just very prepared. And so that first day in the hospital was great, just like nursing him every 3 hours. The second night, he started to wake up a little bit more and he was very screamy. He had a very high pitched little scream. We called it, sounded like an eagle squawk or a pterodactyl, just, very high pitched. And so my husband was very frustrated by that. He was like, this can't be our baby. Like, he's so loud. But we got through that, first night, got to bring him home after, I think, 48 hours in the hospital. I had second and third degree tears, so I was definitely in a lot of pain. And I will say, like, compared to a C-section, the pain that I had the first 2 weeks was just as bad, in my opinion, just like getting up and out of bed, things like that. Just very intense pain. So from that sense, I would say the first 2 weeks, the recovery was about the same, but after the second week, the recovery was a lot better and easier in many ways. But yeah, recovery all in all, like the things it did to my body, C-section, VBAC with tears, I would say kind of similar, but the empowerment that I felt from giving birth vaginally and giving birth unmedicated is just completely unmatched. I would much rather do that than lay on that table. And so I just encourage moms who've been through both that you've done an amazing job, but there is value and benefit to promoting vaginal births So I'm absolutely a proponent of that. And it doesn't deny that C-section moms have gone through a hardship and have given their all, but it does still mean that we need to be promoting that, like, as a society and as a medical system. So, soapbox over, let's get on to breastfeeding. So, the first few weeks were, exactly what I had planned and what I dreamed of, envisioned. I spent the first 2 weeks in my bed or in my bedroom, resting, letting him nurse. He fed every 2.5 to 3 hours. We kind of stuck to our schedule when we could. And then going into weeks, I guess like 2 through 6 or 7, again, it was very smooth. We did our sleep training. So, maybe a whole different episode there. Just kind of like I did when I talked about my firstborn as well. Feeding on a schedule, feed, wake, sleep. Even with nursing, I do believe that it can be good. So we got to 7 weeks. He was feeding every 2 hours, and even at night, he was still waking up like every 2 to 3 hours. And I thought, is my sleep training like working? Like, why is he still up constantly all night long? And I think it was great for his weight and for getting my milk supply going. And then at 7 weeks, all of a sudden, he slept through the night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I was like, oh, this is great. 8 weeks old, 8 hours of sleep. Like, I'll take it. And never again did he have a night feed. Not one time since. It was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But the next day, after he slept through the night, his poop went from that yellow CD breastfeeding color to a dark slimy green with a dot of blood in it. Just one dot, so tiny, the tiniest dot. Like, picture taking a toothpick, dipping it in some red paint, and then dotting it on the diaper. That's how tiny this dot of red blood was. And I immediately, like, all my red flags are going up. My mom guilt, gut feeling is something's wrong. So I'm immediately like researching it, thinking through all the things that this could be. But again, he's nursing great. He's feeding great. He has a normal amount of spit up and reflux, but the dark green mucousy poop does point to a potential food sensitivity or food allergy. So I try not to stress, but I'm starting to get a little bit into a rabbit hole of internet searching and things like that. And I'm starting to ask people. And when people post on social media that they have had a dairy issue with their baby, I'm asking questions and just starting to do this research. But every time that I would change his diaper, it just turned into anxiety. And you know how it is as a mom, like when there's something wrong in those early stages, it just feels so huge. And at the time, those bloody diapers just felt like the end of the world to me, just like so terrible and frustrating. And I was like thinking, like, there's blood, like his insides might be like ripped open. What is happening to him? And so, but I really thought, like, let's talk to the doctor, figure things out. So I believe there was supposed to be a checkup, I think the 2-month checkup. So he's about 9 weeks old, 2 months old. And so we went to the doctor, and our pediatrician is super chill. He was always chill with my firstborn, not worried about weight gain or anything like that. And at this point, I think maybe Calvin had dropped a little bit of a percentile. Like, I think he was born like 40th percentile or something. He was 7 pounds, 4 ounces. But then I think at that point he was about 10 or 11 pounds. So he had gained quite a bit, maybe close to 12 pounds. I don't remember. But then the doctor was like, I don't want you stressing yourself out over this green poop thing. He was like, I think it could just be like normal for him, and I don't want you to drive yourself crazy cutting out foods. So I would say just don't worry about it unless he is showing like extreme discomfort or screaming, crying constantly. Which I'm also like, he's a newborn. He screams and cries constantly. Like, it's normal. So I left that appointment with my mom gut saying, like, no, something is wrong. Like, I can't just take this. Don't drive yourself crazy from the pediatrician. I very much appreciate his supportive breastfeeding. He did not suggest formula and said, don't drive yourself crazy. So I think that's actually great. I think it's a great response from a pediatrician, but at the same time, I felt like, no, something's wrong. Something's wrong with my baby. Like this can't be normal. So I did kind of play around with starting to cut some foods out, but I wanted to do it in a scientific way, gathering my data and everything. And I just felt like it was time to get a second opinion. So I went and got a different pediatrician. And this pediatrician was a lot more crunchy. I would say a lot more of the crunchy people in my community like her. So she's more holistic, but she is not a functional doctor by any means. She's still a traditional doctor, but she was more open to holistic remedies or holistic choices. So went ahead and went to see her. And she was like, well, on the one hand, this could be a food allergy, but if it's not, then this could just be some bile that's coloring his poop this color. I was like, well, what about the blood? And she was like, well, it wasn't a lot of blood. Again, this was like a dot of blood. But she was like, well, is he, fussy and angry and reflux and all these things? And no, he wasn't. And so I think he was probably about 3 months old at this point. So about 12 weeks old. So she said, why don't you cut out foods for 3 days at a time? Now, the research that I had done on dairy, egg, or soy protein allergies, the research shows that it is no longer in your breast milk around like 8 to 12 hours. So you could cut out dairy for a day, and within a day, that breast milk could be like cleansed of that food for your baby. Now, that if the baby is having an immediate reaction, face is turning red and blotchy, rash, reflux, screaming, colic, crying while nursing, then it would be very obvious. And so what I was finding in these Facebook groups and things like that was that women were saying when there was a true dairy allergy, that within a day, that baby was calmed down and they could see a real big difference. They could eat a piece of cheese and see within a day their baby reacting intensely. But the other aspect of this is the green mucousy poop could take up to a month to go away. So this is where I was like, I'm not really sure how to perform this test because it could take up to a month to cleanse his stomach with the green poop symptom. But that was his only symptom. So I didn't have these other quick symptoms like reflux and things like that to base it off of. So I wasn't really sure, but I also didn't want to cut out things for a whole month. And I didn't want to have to wait a whole month to figure out like, oh, yeah, it's a yes or a no on these really big food groups, especially dairy. I mean, eggs. I was eating eggs every day, but I was like, that's not as hard to cut out because it's just like one food. Whereas dairy, it's like, it's cheese, it's yogurt, it's milk in your coffee drinks. It's so many things. So that was when the doctor said cut out for 3 days at a time. And I decided to trust her because I was like, I'm doing this with an expert. So I'm going to do it 3 days at a time, keep a food journal. So I cut out dairy for 3 days now because at this point I was back at work. I was already pumping. So in order to get my 3 days, I did have to go a little bit longer than 3 days. So I did a full week. just so that my pumping could kind of catch up, and I would just pump the milk and label it DF for dairy free or EF for egg free or DF EF if it was both. So I did that for a couple weeks, and I saw no change in his green mucousy stool, stayed the same. Then I went back to the pediatrician. So at this point, he's like 14 weeks old. So from 6 or 7 weeks all the way to 14 weeks, we're still seeing this green mucousy poop nonstop. Like it was not going back to the regular color. And I'm back at work. I'm pumping. Oh, pumping was going great, by the way. I don't feel like I've really mentioned this, but my strategy there, I started at 4 weeks old. We started giving him 1 bottle a day, and I would pump during that time. And I was amazed because I was getting like 4 or 5 ounces, which when I was with my firstborn, getting 5 ounces, I only got that like after a long night's sleep. It was usually like 2 ounces, maybe 3 ounces. And so the fact that I was getting 4 or 5 ounces during a pump session, I was like, this is amazing. Just so happy and proud of myself. But I mean, it's really not me. It's just like I had a bigger full-term baby who's extracting that milk and telling my body to produce. So that was great. And then once he started sleeping through the night, I would get up and pump for 10 minutes before he got up, and I would get like 6 ounces. So I have this extra little stash going, felt great getting ready to go to work. And when I got to work, again, I was getting like 4 to 5 ounces per pump, which was fabulous. That just felt great, felt like enough. And he was doing about 4-ounce bottles. So I felt really good about 4 ounces per bottle and getting the pumps. It just felt like everything was aligning, and I had a little extra pump at like 10 p.m. right before I went to bed, and then I had my little extra morning pump when I got up in the morning. He's sleeping through the night, and so we're just getting this great milk stash going, and when I go to work, I'm just feeling so confident. I'm encouraging all other moms, but then at the same time, I have this food sensitivity thing going on that's just so frustrating. So we go back to the pediatrician. So let me get back to that part. So we go back to the pediatrician, and she's like, okay, how did your food journal go? And I'm like, well, I don't see a difference. So she says, well, I still think maybe this is just normal for him because of the extra bile. But our last thing we can check is we can run a stool test and just check for an infection of some kind. And she was like, well, I'm not sure that it could be an infection because he doesn't have a fever. He's not upset. Like, he's not showing signs of an infection, but won't hurt to do it. So she put in the order. The stool sample was very easy to do. I just kind of scraped the diaper for some stool and put it in a container. So I do that. And after I get it sent off, she calls me, which, if they call you after a lab, there's probably something negative going on. And sure enough, he had a parasite. Yes, the Giardia parasite that is common in dogs and humans. And so we get that call and confirmation, and it's just kind of funny because, like, being in the crunchy world, like, people are talking about parasites all the time and parasite cleanses, and oh, you probably have parasites if you have brain fog and all these things. And my husband was even saying, like, oh, maybe we should do parasite cleanses. Like, maybe we should look into that and explore that. And here it is, we get this positive test for a parasite. And the doctor was like, hey, this is nothing to worry about. We're going to do an antibiotic that he is able to take as a 4-month-old. And we'll go from there. So we did the antibiotic. I think it was the beginning of November. And his poop continued to be green. And during that month of November, he did test positive for RSV. So he was coughing and miserable, and our evenings just weren't fun. We would get off work at 5, and then his bedtime was like 7:30. And so between 5 and 7:30, he was usually just fussy from not sleeping at daycare, coughing because of the RSV, and he refused tummy time and just really wasn't super happy. And then in December, around Christmas time, it's Christmas vacation, and I just start eating all the things again. The eggs, the dairy, the sugar, even a little bit of gluten at this point. So I'm just eating everything. And I'm just so happy and relaxed. And all of a sudden, his poop turns back to yellow and it's totally normal again. And his cough finally clears up and he becomes a happier baby. So it's like it just really took all that time, and I guess it wasn't a food sensitivity. I mean, at the end of the day, is it possible still that maybe it was? Yeah, maybe it was eggs. Maybe at this point, I would basically had dairy all the time, but I still kind of kept eggs to a minimum because I kind of didn't like the way they made me feel too. One thing that my functional nutritionist said is your immune system is their immune system. So when you're breastfeeding, if in the positive sense, you're giving them immunity to different pathogens or illnesses. But if you are having an autoimmune reaction to foods, you could be passing that on to your baby through these antibodies. So helping out your own gut as the mom is going to help your baby as well. So I think at that point, like, my gut was happy. I think also just like removing some stressors and just enjoying Christmas vacation really helped. And then the second week of January, he has his 6-month checkup and he has lost weight. This is shocking and devastating. When you are a breastfeeding mom, the weight gain of your baby, it feels like it's all on you. And I mean, it is. Like, you're the one feeding them and nourishing them. And even if you're feeding formula, like, and you're trying to have them gain weight, like, I think that's probably super rare that a formula-fed baby would have an issue with weight gain. But if they're having, like, severe reflux or some kind of other medical issue, like, I think that would be very obvious. But I think it's just a little bit harder to see with breastfed babies because they're not always going to be super chunky and you don't know exactly how much they're getting. But I was pumping. So this is where it was just crazy because I think actually the week before that, like first week of January, our freezer is full of milk. And I'm so proud of this. Like, my freezer stash is just so full. I text a midwife friend like, hey, can I donate some milk? Because she liked to keep a little milk bank on hand for her clients. So she said, sure. I had her come over and sure, she sent someone over to pick it up. We counted it and it was 200 ounces. So here I am. I donate 200 ounces. And the next week I get told that my baby has lost weight. So he had been, I think, like almost 13 pounds at his 4-month checkup. And he was like 12.8 pounds at his 6-month checkup. And he has dropped from like, he dropped a little bit each time, went from like 40% to 20% to 10%. And then at this 6-month checkup, he was 0.0 something percentile. Now, he was still bigger than my firstborn. My firstborn was 12 pounds at like almost a year old. So to me, he was big. Like, here's his 12-pound baby. Like, he's 6 months old. He's wearing the 6 to 9 month clothes or the 9-month clothes. He's long, very long and lean. So it was definitely a shock and just a hard hit to like my pride. And during the month of January, I had actually really felt called to start this podcast. I'd taken a break from social media and I was feeling very creative. And I was like, I really want to encourage moms in the area of breastfeeding. I want to start a podcast about breastfeeding. And it's just so weird, the timing there, where it's like, I'm donating milk. I'm starting a podcast about breastfeeding. I'm encouraging people about breastfeeding. And my baby has lost weight, the pressure and just the feeling of like, is my milk enough? And now what am I going to do? Am I going to stand on that? Am I going to keep saying that your milk is enough? Trust your milk? Or am I going to have to supplement with formula? So the pediatrician, she said, I'm really concerned about this. She said, why don't we keep an eye on him for a month? Let's see you back in a month. And during this month, let's start some solid foods. He's 6 months old. He's ready for it. So instead of asking me to supplement with formula, she asked me to supplement with purees and solids. So we start out with solid food, and he loved real solid foods like a piece of bacon, a piece of turkey, a piece of steak, things like that. Loved it, but wasn't really chewing it much, was just kind of gnawing on it. Purees, not so much. Wasn't a huge fan. Would kind of spit them out and stuff like that. And so we started out, and it was kind of slow with solids. So a month later, he's gained a little bit. He hasn't lost weight, but he's still in the like 0.0 something percentile. But at this point, like, how is he going to get back, And so at that point, the pediatrician was like, okay, I'm still like a little worried. Let's check back in another month. So we keep doing that. So then by like 8 months, he is doing like 35 ounces of breast milk a day, right? Like he's nursing twice a day. He is drinking 6 to 7 ounce bottles at daycare of breast milk. I have plenty of breast milk. Like, we're not cutting into the stash at all. It's going great. And he's nursing great. He's still sleeping through the night. He's starting to eat solids. Now he's eating solids 3 times a day. And he does gain weight, but it's nothing drastic. He goes up to like the 0.5 or like 0.1 or 1 percentile. So, but we're like, how is he supposed to catch up? What is she expecting? Like, is she expecting him to jump all the way back up to like the 40th percentile, like when he was born? Like, what is she really looking for? And so I still chose to really like trust my milk, continue to lean into breastfeeding. I'm starting to get ready to do the podcast in like March and April. But at the same time, I still have this baby that like isn't really like drastically gaining weight. I think he did gain like the most weight around like 9 months maybe. And so at that point, she felt a little better, but she was just like, I think that maybe everything that happened with him with the parasite and RSV and all these things, I'm concerned that they could be signs of potentially a GI absorption issue. So I want you to see a specialist at a hospital in Fort Worth. And we were just like, no, like we can't put him through this and go see a specialist. Like, he's just a small, skinny baby. And he was so similar to my firstborn. And this is where I get back to like having like kind of a chill pediatrician. Our first pediatrician was very chill, and I don't know that he would have really cared. I mean, he was never bothered by the fact that Owen was 0.01 percentile or whatever. So I did kind of like write off the pediatrician as being like a little bit too hypervigilant about the numbers, because it's like, it's not just the numbers. Like, is he happy? Is he sleeping? Is he active? So he was active. He loves to talk. He's a very big, babbler, but he did not like tummy time and he did not like floor time. And he really wouldn't like let us put him down very much. He had rolled one time at like 4 months, and then he never rolled again. So at that point, 9, 10 months, we're like, okay, let's give him time. Like, he'll figure things out. But he's not crawling at all. Not even army crawling. He's not rolling around the floor. He's not being super active. But when you look at this baby, like, you just wouldn't think anything's wrong. Like, he's happy, he's alert, he's looking you in the eye. He's playing games. He's starting to learn sign language. He's babbling. Very social. So we just felt like this might just be like him. And so I guess we kind of had more of like maybe an old school approach. It's kind of like how like my parents were with me. They told me like I was a very small baby and I was breastfed and I didn't crawl till almost a year old and things like that. That I was just like, let's just kind of trust the process here and trust that things are going to happen on their own. But also in the back of my mind, having this thought of like, should I be pushing harder? Should I be seeing specialists and therapists and all these things? So I told him, you have until 12 months to crawl. And it's so funny because, like, I feel like this is how Calvin is. Like, with his due date, it was like, Calvin, go to your due date, but don't go over. And bam, he's born on his due date at 11:30 p.m. And then with the crawling, I was like, Calvin, I need you to crawl when, like, before you turn 1, I need you to crawl. And he starts crawling like 3 days before his birthday. Like 3 days before his birthday, he starts army crawling. This kid. So, and like a week before his birthday, like at this point, he's been a great eater. Loves all the things, purees, breast milk, solid food. It's great. And then all of a sudden, like around his birthday, he starts spitting out every food, throwing every food. Every single food is going on the floor. Doesn't want to eat at all. Like the only thing he wants is breast milk and purees. And it was so funny because I'm like just getting to the point, I think around the time he turned 1, where I'm like starting to want to drop some pumps and like cut some pumps out. And he had this bottle that I thought he was ready to drop. And I got the daycare to drop it when he was like 10 months. So at that point, he was down to four feedings a day, 2 nursing, 2 bottles. And then the daycare worker's like, oh, he needs another bottle. So they add another 7-ounce bottle. And as a breastfeeding mom, like how frustrating that is when now we're giving more milk than I'm making. And at this point, I've started toning down my pumps. I'm not doing some of those extra ones at night or in the morning. And I've launched the podcast at this point. So I'm promoting breastfeeding. And then I'm having this nervous feeling of like, we're running into the stash. Like we're giving him these extra bottles. And also now he doesn't want to eat real food. So are we stuck with breast milk? But also breast milk isn't helping him gain weight. So we're just in this conundrum, right? And pretty much everything you go through as a mom as you go through their first year babyhood journey, there's just so many things that you can question and doubt yourself and doubt that what you're doing is right and stress or like feel like it's the end of the world. When really it's not. Like they're not going to be graduating from college being like, was I in the right percentile when I was 11 months old? Like they're going to be like not wanting to eat their spinach. And you're going to be like, I remember when you used to throw every food on the floor. It's like everything works out. I mean, there's so many different ways to parent. There's so many different ways to do like baby-led weaning and purees. And yeah, I do think there's probably like a slightly better way to do things. But at the end of the day, we all end up eating food. We all end up learning how to eat, learning how to gain weight. And yes, there's diagnoses out there and there's sensory issues and there's autism and there's all these things. But like, we also are human and our babies are human. They're not robots. They're not growth charts. It's okay for them to be themselves. So I don't know. I just go back and forth with so many things because I also am like an advocate of like doing therapy and doing and being healthy and optimizing. Like I optimize my marketing, I optimize my podcast. Like let me optimize my baby's feeding journey. And like I do think there's some value in like setting them up for success. Like, well, why would we be breastfeeding if we weren't trying to set them up for success? Like we have every excuse not to breastfeed. So I'm obviously trying to set them up for success. But anyway, tangent here. There's just like a little soapbox or a philosophical thing to kind of think through like as a parent is there's that balance, I think, of what is the best practice or what the experts are saying versus what is your baby going to need and going to grow into, and doing your best, but also trusting God, planting the seed, but God is going to water and grow that seed. Okay, where was I? So, okay, so he turns 1, and we are barely crawling, army crawling, not pushing up to all fours. So we go to the pediatrician. She weighs him in again, and I think at this point he was like 17 pounds. So he's still like 0.1 percentile or something. Throughout all of this, I'm using ChatGPT to like make little growth charts, things like that, and just like see where he's at. Very helpful. So anyway, I asked the pediatrician like what she wants us to do, and she's like, I still think you need to see a GI specialist. Like, I think that he is eating enough. And I was like, well, actually, he's not really eating anymore. Like, he spits everything out. I think maybe some speech therapy might be warranted at this point. And so she was like, you know what? Let's do that. I'll put in a referral. He's not crawling, so he probably needs like speech therapy, maybe physical therapy. So let's put in the referral. And I asked for a referral with the early childhood intervention, which is what we used with Owen as well. So I asked for the referral, and I told her we're not going to check out the GI specialist yet. Like, I want to give him a chance to really eat solid food and learn how to crawl and learn all these things before we continue down like a path of does he have a GI absorption issue? So, and like, keep in mind, he's happy. He doesn't have eczema and allergies and he doesn't have gut issues anymore. Barely even gets a diaper rash. Like, he's pretty healthy. Like, he gets sick. He's better within a couple of days. So he's just not like meeting milestones and meeting growth charts the way that she wants him to, or the way the numbers want him to. So going into his 12th month, he's a year old, and I start dropping some pumps. I did finally get his daycare to drop the extra bottle. So then we were down to 2 nursing sessions and 2 bottles. And then I think he was almost 13 months old when we went ahead and dropped the final bottle at dropped a bottle at daycare. So we were down to 1 bottle. We did the afternoon one. The afternoon teachers were very willing to do it, and they were down to offer him a straw cup with some water or some whole milk in it. He wasn't a fan of whole milk, but very few babies, I feel like, are. And so I started dropping pumps at work. I think at 12 months, I dropped down to 2 pumps instead of 3. And then by the end of his 12th month, so going into 13 months, I was fully done pumping. So I just dropped 1 pump a week, pushed him back a little bit at a time, and had no issues with engorgement or anything like that. Like, it was very smooth. I mean, I think your body just knows when it's time. And if you do hit that 12-month mark, it's pretty easy to stop pumping if you want to, because your body just knows, like, it's time. And so at that point, so going into 13 months, we were down to just nursing twice a day, and then he still has a bottle at daycare. And I said to the workers at daycare, like, we'll just do that, keep that bottle until the breast milk runs out. So when the freezer is empty, we'll just stop it. And nursing this last month from 13 to 14 months has been pretty chill. It's honestly great once you get past 12 months, it's like, it's not required anymore. So if he nurses a little bit and then he gets mad, it's like, okay, well, you're mad, you can have solid food. Here's a snack. Or, okay, you're mad, you're done. You bite me, you're done. So, and then also if you're wanting it and you want some milk, like, that's great. We've been doing this kind of thing where I'll like sit on the couch with kind of my shirt off, and he just switches back and forth between each breast, like, as much as he wants. And I don't think that's necessarily optimal if you're trying to like keep up a milk supply, but it's what he wants to do, and it's chill. I think at one point the other day, he was eating a waffle, and I needed to nurse him real quick so we could get to get on with our day, and I just kind of let him eat a waffle in between nursing. So I mean, that's toddlerhood. Like they're weaning. They're moving on to solid food, and it's just a little bit of milk, just a little bit extra. And so I feel like we kind of hit this little peak here at 14 months where just this last week I went to San Francisco on a business trip. So I was gone for 3 nights and 4 days, and I brought my pump with me, and this was my chance, 14 months. If I wanted to, I think I could have stopped completely, but I'm doing this podcast, so obviously I'm an advocate of breastfeeding, and not to say that I'm just going to do it forever because I'm doing the podcast, but I didn't want this trip to be the reason that I had to stop. So I took my pump and I pumped in the morning while I put on my makeup, and in the late evening I'd get back to my hotel room and I'd just pump and washed my pump parts in the sink with some dish soap, put the milk in the little fridge in the hotel room, grabbed a bag of ice on the way out. I mean, at this point, it's just like second nature. There's nothing hard or weird about it. Just grabbing the ice, grabbing the milk. I've been doing this for over a year now, so I know the drill. Got my pumpables pump, and it's just a great time. Like, did I want to pump while I'm on this trip? No. Did he have bottles while I was gone? No. Like, he didn't even have bottles. When I came back, we started nursing again, and it was great. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like, there's not a requirement right now. There's no one forcing me to do anything. He's not forcing anything. I'm not forcing anything. Like, this is my choice to continue to nurse. And when it's time to stop, I think we'll both know. And I think prayerfully considering it too. Like, I would say that if someone was struggling with the issue of not having enough milk, like, hey, pray about it. Are you wanting to stop breastfeeding before 12 months? Pray about it. I've had so many guests come on that say they prayed or they hit rock bottom and they had the faith aspect, but it's like, this is God's design. So why shouldn't I go ahead and pray about like when to wean? And then it's not the pressure of, oh, I'm doing this podcast or I'm an advocate for breastfeeding, so I have to go longer or have to do it a certain way. It's just prayer, conversations with my husband, and watchfully looking at my baby to say, like, is he ready or not? So he did start feeding therapy. No major issues, no major diagnosis or anything. He just kind of like, I guess, your standard, like, doesn't really want to chew. She does think that his chewing muscles might develop better once he is crawling because some of those muscles all kind of grow together. And he has started crawling like on all fours. He's not really pulling to stand or walking yet. And so he is in physical therapy. His physical therapist said he has a little bit of low muscle tone going on. Now, those are some of these things that we're seeing could be signs of like a deeper issue. However, I do think, again, he's happy. He's very social. He's looking us in the eye. He's active. He is beginning to grow and gain that weight. So I have a lot of confidence that things are all going to work out with him. And I mean, you just do your best as a parent and define success based on what God says and based on God's design and go from there. So that's where we're at. I do want to give a little shout out. Like, I don't have sponsors or anything yet, but I want to give a shout out to Milk Crate from Breastfeed Atlanta. I used them this time around to plug in my insurance and get my free pump through insurance. So they offered the Pumpables Genie Advanced, which is the pump that I had my heart set on for this second breastfeeding experience. So I ordered that. So again, it's Milk Crate, Breastfeed Atlanta. And the cool thing about it is they will automatically ship you every month your new pump parts. So if you are working and you're pumping a lot, you're going to need to replace those parts monthly. Sometimes I would kind of need to replace them a little bit sooner. I think the silicone flanges do tend to wear out a little bit faster than the plastic ones. So sometimes I would get to like the 3-week mark and kind of feel like my supply was dipping a little bit. And I would feel like that last week was a little rough before I got my pump parts. But Milk Crate was amazing. They would send me the box, and sometimes it had little goodies in it. And I was able to, if I needed to order any upgrades, just pay like a little bit, but they pay for the shipping and everything, and it's free. So through your insurance. So it's amazing, incredible. I highly recommend it. So those are my biggest recommendations is Pumpables Genie Advanced and Milk Crate through Breastfeed Atlanta. The Pumpables Genie Advanced is amazing. You can hook it up to a wearable pump, and Milk Crate actually sent me wearable cups that I could hook up to the Pumpables Genie Advanced. Now, I'm not a big fan of wearable cups, so that didn't really work out for me. I don't like having to like peek in my shirt and check to see if things are working. So I usually just use the Pumpables, kind of just wearing it out. I pumped at a football game. I nursed at parades, outdoors, restaurants, everywhere you could think that we went. I was nursing, travel. We just had a great time, an amazing time. So that is it for this episode 12, and my journey with Calvin. So thank you so much for listening, and please follow us on Instagram at the Breastfeeding Diaries podcast, or if you want to send me guest ideas or feedback, email breastfeedingdiaries@gmail.com.